Terrifying man allowed back onto the streets to commit one of Britain's most gruesome and shocking murders.
I wanted their souls. I wanted to kill him and then eat him. If I had more time, I'd have tried to cook him and eat him. The spine-chilling words, spoken by a man consumed by unspeakable darkness, marked the beginning of a horrifying tale. It's the tale of the gruesome murders of London's most notorious cannibal, who ate his victim, sending the entire world in a state of shock. Peter Bryan's desire for human flesh brought him to Brian Cherry's home, an unsuspecting man who tragically fell prey to him. The scene that followed was beyond gruesome, showcasing Peter's extreme cruelty. The world could only watch in horror as Peter's descent into cannibalism unfolded before their eyes. His admission to consuming his victim's brain with a disturbing calmness highlighted a level of wickedness that was almost impossible to grasp. Peter dismembered Brian Cherry's body, and when questioned, he said, "I ate his brain with butter, and if I would have had more time, I would have cooked it." Brian Cherry, a 43-year-old man, leading a quiet life in his Walthamstow apartment, had tragically become Brian's next victim. It was a regular evening when his friend Nicola entered his apartment, blissfully unaware of the horror that awaited her. As she stepped inside, an acrid smell permeated the air, a sinister forewarning of the scene she was about to witness. The apartment, once a sanctuary for Brian, had transformed into a nightmare. Peter emerged from the living room, his eyes glazed with madness, a knife clutched tightly in his hands.
The female friend had gone round to Brian Cherry's flat. She had a key, she let herself in. When she went in, she said, "Where's Brian?"
He pounded his chest and said, "Brian is dead." His words hung in the air, a strange proclamation of his heinous act. Nicola, initially in disbelief, went into the room from where Brian had emerged. There, on the floor, was Brian's lifeless body. It was a horrifying sight of death and dismemberment. Nicola calmly said that she had to do something and escaped from the apartment to call the police. When the police arrived, they were faced with an unimaginably horrifying scene. The surprising part was that Peter stood there calmly, without any remorse on his face. He didn't try to run or even flinch at the sight of police. In the kitchen, a chilling sight awaited them. A pan on the stove contained a disturbing mixture of Brian Cherry's brain, skin, and hair. It was a nightmarish scene, a window into the depths of Brian's sadistic psyche. Just imagine coming to an apartment to find a pan with body parts and a tub of butter on the side. The horror is unimaginable. Peter Bryan, now a convicted killer, sits across from a prison psychologist, Dr. Sarah Roberts. His eyes still carry a disturbing calmness, but beneath the surface, there's a hint of the madness that led to his heinous acts. "I killed Brian. I opened the door. I killed him, and then I ate his brain." He confessed his words without any kind of remorse. He revealed his insatiable hunger for human flesh, describing the taste as delicious.
He admitted that he got a sexual frisson, a sexual kick, from killing and the rituals involved.
The brutality of the act was beyond comprehension. Later, investigations revealed the extent of the brutality inflicted upon Brian Cherry. His skull had been shattered with a hammer, his arms were pulled out of their sockets, and his leg was cut. How do you make sense of something like that? It is difficult to understand something like that when you're dealing with a psychotic person, because they can justify their crimes in a way that no one around them can understand. As the details of the crime emerged, it became evident that Brian's actions transcended the realm of ordinary criminality. His motives, his impulses, were rooted in a darkness so profound that it baffled even the most experienced professionals. Dr. Martin Locke, A psychiatrist tasked with analyzing Brian found himself face to face with a monster beyond compare. Peter tried to normalize the incident by saying cannibalism has been around for years and everybody does it. Everything that he says sounds normal to him, but to a normal human being, it sounds right out of a horrific novel. In the end, Peter Bryan was sentenced to a life behind bars, a fitting punishment for crimes so heinous that they defied explanation. However, his acts didn't end there. He became restless even in the prison when he claimed he would eat the noses and ears of everyone in the prison.
He then threatened to eat the noses and ears of all the prison officers. And therefore, whenever they had to access him in his cell, they had to use riot gear, the full frontal riot shield, to get in there.
This obsession with killing actually began with an infatuation, an obsession that festered within Peter Bryan's troubled mind. In the quaint streets of East London, young 25-year-old Peter Bryan, working at a clothing store, found himself captivated by a 20-year-old girl, Nisha Sheth, the store owner's daughter. His infatuation grew like a malignant tumor, feeding on his desperation and loneliness. The walls of his sanity started to crumble as he plotted revenge for being sacked by the store owner for stealing clothes. On that fateful day in March 1993, the world witnessed the gruesome unraveling of Peter's disturbed mind. Armed with a claw hammer, he embarked on a spree of violence that left a young boy gravely injured and Nisha brutally murdered. The echoes of her screams still hung heavy in the air as Peter fled the scene, leaving behind a gruesome tableau of death and despair. As Peter was confined, the darkness within him continued to fester. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, he descended further into madness, his mind becoming a breeding ground for unspeakable urges. On February 25, 1994, Peter Bryan appeared in court, facing a grave charge, the murder of Nisha Sheth. Peter admitted he did it, but argued that he was mentally ill. He claimed his mind was not right at the time, so he shouldn't be fully blamed for the crime. Because of his mental health condition, Peter was not sent to a regular prison. Instead, he was kept in a special hospital called Rampton Secure Hospital under the Mental Health Act. The doctors there would decide if he could ever be released based on whether he was still a danger to others. The system failed to recognize the depth of his darkness. In 2001, Peter was released. He re-entered society only to commit further atrocities. The question looms, was it his fault, or did the system's oversight pave the way for more bloodshed? The shocking truth behind how this terrifying man was allowed back onto the streets raises profound questions about our justice system and public safety. Despite being a convicted criminal, he found his way back into society, a dangerous possibility that became a terrifying reality. 1 in 5 murders in the UK is now committed by individuals with a history of imprisonment. From serial rapists to convicted killers, these dangerous individuals harbor dark intentions even while serving their sentences. The chilling reality is that prison became a breeding ground for their psychotic behaviors. Peter Bryan's insatiable darkness found yet another new victim. Richard Loudwell, an inmate like Bryan, faced a nightmare beyond comprehension. Bryan, driven by his macabre desires, attacked Loudwell with a ferocity that defies understanding. He used anything he could find, even the cord of his own trousers, to tighten the grip around Loudwell's throat and smash his head against the floor. The brutal attack sent shockwaves through the psychiatric hospital. Shockingly, patients sang Lazy Sunday to mask the noise during the attack. Eventually, the staff rushed Loudwell away, his body limp and battered. In the days that followed, an eerie quiet fell over the ward. Patients kept to themselves, while nurses whispered in hushed tones about the violent patient Bryan. He had been admitted just a week earlier, presenting symptoms of vivid hallucinations and violent outbursts. But no one could have predicted he was capable of such a savage assault at such a high security place. As Loudwell fought for his life in the ICU, Brian seemed unaffected by what he had done. He sat idly in the common room, a vacant look in his eyes. When questioned by the police, he calmly admitted to the attack, showing no remorse. "I wanted to eat him," Brian kept repeating. "If you had given me more time, I would have." 6 weeks later, when Loudwell finally succumbed to his injuries, Brian felt nothing. No guilt, no sadness, no shame. Just a lingering frustration that he had been stopped before fully satisfying his craving. The nurses cried as Loudwell's body was taken away, horrified at what had happened on their watch. But deep down, they knew Brian was beyond their help. His mind was lost, consumed by a darkness and depravity that medicine could not reach. All they could do was keep him confined and hope no other patients would fall victim. The inquest that followed laid bare the shocking truth. Systematic failures allowed this tragedy to unfold. The lack of proper assessment, the lapses in observation. These were not just mistakes. They were fatal oversights that cost this man his life.